Okay, so let's look at how we would UV map something a little more organic, like a head or a character's body. So at the moment I just have a automatic map. So if I go to edit UVs, UV texture editor, you can just see that there's an automatic map there. So the first thing I want to do is apply our UV grid. So if I go to my material attributes, if you don't feel like looking for a UV grid, you could also use something like a checker pattern or a cloth pattern or something like that. That's just going to let you know or indicate whether stretching. I kind of like using a UV grid just because I have that added help of having letters and numbers on there, and I know if things are backwards or upside down or so on. So I'll use a file, and again, the UV grid that I'm using I just found off the internet. I googled UV grid and I found this ash UV grid 01.jpg, which is probably my favorite one that's just out there on the internet. So if we go to textured mode, we see that that's now applied to our model. If we go to our UV texture editor, so edit UVs, UV texture editor, select our model, we'll see that if we turn our texture on, it's there. I'm going to keep it off in this view for now, just because it's kind of intense on my eyes when I look at it in here. And rather than starting with an automatic map this time, I'm going to start with a planar map. So I'll go to Create UVs, Planar Map. And I want to start with a planar map just because it's this gives me something to work with where there's no seams. So I can kind of put the seams where I want them, and it'll just work out a little better for me. So the first thing I want to do is I'll leave it kind of at this side view at the moment, but I want to map the front of the face. The first thing I want to work on is the sort of the front of the head, and so I want it whenever I'm texturing I want it to be straight on, sort of like a front view rather than a side view. So what I'm going to do is cut the face, this top part or this front part of the face off, and I'm going to map it again with a planar map and see if I can get that facing towards the camera. But I want to leave this other stuff sort of at like a side view because I think that's going to help me later on. So I can come in here to start and just select, go to edge mode, kind of, I go back and forth between my my viewport and my UV texture editor. So let's go up to, oops, and this doesn't have to be perfect. I'm probably going to cut things apart and resew them a few times here, so don't worry about having things exactly the way I have them, because I will probably cut them up and resew them together. But I just want to start by cutting off or cutting out the front part of the face. So I have those edges selected all around the front part of the face. So now I'm going to go to my UV texture editor and right click, polygons, cut UV edges. So now I can go to my UV mode, select some of those UVs, shell. I can move that whole shell off. So obviously I kind of missed a face there, which is no big deal because I can just, from here I can just cut that. So select the edges in the viewport and then come over to the UV texture editor and go to polygons, cut UV edges. And then I can select the edges again over here and go to polygons, move and sew, and that will sew that together. So now I have that separate. So I'll move this part of the head down here, so I don't really want to deal with that quite yet. I do want to cut the horns off though, so because they would be kind of hard to unfold in this position. So I'm just going to select the edges that go all the way around those horns, polygons, cut UV edges, then I can go to UV mode, sorry, control select a shell and move off the horns. So then we just have the front part of the face. So this is the section that I actually want to remap with a planar map again, so it's sort of facing the right direction. So I'm going to go to face mode, select all the faces there, and then go to create UVs, planar mapping. And this is still going to map it from the side, but I can go to my projection node here that it just created and go to rotate, and you'll see that my rotate Y is 90 degrees. And that's because I changed it to 90 degrees before. So I'm going to just change that back to 0, and it's going to give me a front projection of my face there. So now that I have that from a front view, I can try unfolding it. So I'll go to my UV mode, select my UVs, and see what happens when I unfold. So not bad. I do get some overlapping in the eyes. I get some overlapping in the mouth. And I just know from sort of experience that the horns here are going to kind of stretch in a way that I don't want. So I want to go ahead and cut those seams right there. So I'll go to my edge mode, select those edges. Try to unselect the ones that I don't want. Polygons, cut UV edges. Go to my unfold tool, see if I can unfold those guys just a little bit better. Maybe a little tad bit of relax. So I noticed that my my head, or the front part of my face, is actually having a hard time unfolding. So what I want to try to do is just unfold the face without having to worry about anything else. So I'm going to go to my marquee select here, make sure I'm in UV mode, and just marquee around the edge loops in the face that I want to unfold. Like that, and then just try unfolding those guys. Still not quite giving me what I want. So let me undo a few times. Sometimes you just have to undo, back up a little bit, back before I unfolded, if I can back up that far. There we go. And I want to try cutting away just the front part of the face and unfolding that and kind of see what I get. So I'm going to come in and select some faces just to, or some edges. Just kind of, basically I'm control clicking to deselect. And this doesn't have to be a perfect selection, so I'm not doing anything too crazy because I'm eventually just going to sew these back together. But I don't want it to unfold and be super stretched out, so I want to be careful about which sections of the model I actually want to unfold. I'm just trying to match up what I have on the left side. So then I'm going to right click polygons, cut UV edges, select some UVs, go to shell and just move that off a little bit. And just try unfolding these guys by themselves. So that gives me a little better result. I don't have any crazy overlapping in the eyes. I do in the mouth, but that should be an easy fix. And sometimes you just have to go in manually and fix these issues. So that's what I'm going to try to do real quick. Just come in and select these vertices and try to move them to where they're no longer overlapping. This is, you know, one of those situations where it's hard to make sure that they're not overlapping because they're actually overlapping in the geometry, but I don't want them overlapping in the UVs because I don't want them sharing the same part of the texture, and that's basically what's going to happen if they are overlapping. So even if I come in and put a tiny bit of a gap in here, that would be good. So that's what I want to try and do. I'm selecting the verts on both sides just so I do it evenly. I try to do this symmetrically. It's not an exact science. Just kind of takes some clicking around and trying different things to get it to work right. So you have to zoom way in to get the verts that you want. So once I have this, what I can do, let's get these guys really close together. So once I have these guys kind of spaced out and not overlapping, what I can do is, again, I'll go to my marquee select over here and I'll select only the verts around the mouth. I have to go in and make sure I have them selected all. So I'm going to have to go in and select some and deselect some. Like that. And then I can hold down Shift and select that whole shell, and it'll basically invert my selection. So now I have everything except for those selected. So now if I unfold, it's going to unfold everything except for those vertices. So the whole mouth is going to kind of conform to those vertices. So that's good. That's what I want. That section there is nice and laid out, and we can see that in our 3D viewport over here. Then I can try sewing this back to our head. So I'll select my shell here, scale it up a little bit. And sew these edges together. I can always unfold them later. So I'll just go to polygons, sew UV edges, and then I can just hit my G key to sew these other guys together. And again, it doesn't matter that I select those interior edges because they're already sewed to something. So it's okay if you just kind of make crazy selections here and just move and sew. Alright, so I have that face unfolded pretty well. I know that I'm eventually going to need to cut open or cut apart these seams just so it kind of attaches to the head better. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. I'll just select these edges on the sides of the horn. Make sure I don't have the edges that I don't want. Polygons, cut UV edges, and now I want to do an unfold again, but I don't want to unfold the part of the face that I already spent time trying to unfold. So I'm going to go to my UV mode again, go to my selection tool over here, and I'm just going to circle the UVs that I don't want to unfold. And make sure I have that same sort of selection. So if there's any vertices that are kind of stray, make sure I unselect those. And then I can invert that selection by holding down Shift and selecting everything. And then I can just unfold everything except for the face. And you can see over here what's happening. It's actually evening out everything. It's getting rid of a lot of stretching, and it's solving a lot of problems for us. So it's actually a very good thing. Okay, so there is that. The horns I want to deal with later. Let's deal with the back of the head. So let's look at this in my 3D viewport, and let's go ahead and turn on display polygons, texture border edges, so we can see where our borders are. And I kind of want to cut off the top back portion of the head, so I'm going to do that just starting at the ear here, selecting some edges around the back of the ear and then the back of the head. Let's go to our untextured view so it makes it a little easier to see. The UV grid's nice to use because it shows you where there's stretching, but on the other hand, it can be kind of a bane because it's just really hard to see your selections with that texture on there. So it's nice to switch back and forth. So my ears are not symmetrical. My model in general isn't symmetrical, so that's why it's kind of hard to match up what I have selected. So I think that's good. So I can come over here and say polygons, cut UV edges. So I think this is something that I need to map out as a remap as a planar map from the front too. So I'll select my face and kind of just move that to the side over here. Select this guy. Go to face mode, select all of those faces, go to create UVs, planar map, and change my rotate Y to 0. And it is flipped, which is fine because that's a pretty easy solution for us. We can select all of those UVs, go to the shell, and just flip that around. And now if we unfold these, it should unfold fairly nicely. And that's going to go just like this. Eventually I'll sew those guys together, but not quite yet. Okay, so the ears, I may want to connect. I'll probably end up connecting those back to the head, so I'll go ahead and cut these off for now. So I'll select the edges that go back and behind the ear. Go to polygons, cut UV edges, go back over to this side here. So now I should be able to select the UVs on those ears, go to shell, and just kind of break those off. Now for this part here, it's going to be a little tricky. I already have it mapped from the side, which is where I want it to be mapped, but I need to cut it so it's not all one piece, and then I can flip one side, sew them together, and unfold them. So I want right down the center here, I want that to be cut, so I'll right click, cut UV edges, and then down the back as well. So I'm just clicking an edge where I want my edge selection loop to start, and then I shift double click the edge where I want it to end, and that will select that entire section for me. So then I can go to polygons, cut UV edges. So now I can select one UV, control right click, go to shell, and move those apart. I want to flip this one since it's red. I want it oriented in the right direction. And it's going to be kind of tricky here, but I want to sew these edges in the center together. So go to edge mode, select a big group of those edges, and go to sew UV edges. And make sure I get them all. Okay. And then I can do an unfold. and it may not unfold exactly how I want it. So this is when one of those rare times where I'd actually use the relax option here. So I would relax it a little bit and then unfold, and it should give me a little better result. Maybe do it one more time, just a tad. So now I have a decent result here without any overlapping UVs. I can move that over here now. Now, if I go back to my texture mode, you'll see that the squares here are a lot bigger than they are over here. So that just means I need to come in and scale that up until they match, so I get the equal amount of texel density on both sides. Now I could probably now if I were to do this on my own, I would go in and make sure that I have the seam along the jawline instead of here, but just for demonstration's sake, I'm going to leave it the way it is. Alright, so we have for the most part, we have this not too bad, doesn't look too bad. And I can go in, since I mentioned it, I might as well go ahead and do it. I'm going to go ahead and cut this part of the jaw and sew it up to my head. Just so I have the seam in a little better place. So polygons. Cut UV edges. Move this down a little bit. Move these over here. And sew those guys together. Now, I will unfold again, but I'm basically going to do the same thing and not unfold the face. I'll just unfold everything but the face. I just want to get those jaws in there. Kind of weird without them. I like having my UVs in the right spot. So, and while we're at it, we might as well do the ears. So break the ears up here. This one needs to be flipped, so I'll flip that around, and let's just go ahead and unfold those and see if we can get those to unfold correctly. And they actually unfold pretty well, which is surprising. Ears are usually a very difficult thing to unfold. Okay, so we can move our ears over as well. And sew those into our head. Now we only really have 3 edges here to sew up, so it's going to be pretty simple. So polygons, sew UV edges, and then just use my G key, sew those back together. And I'm basically doing this just because anywhere I can get rid of a seam is good. The fewer seams you have, the better. Just because then they're not going to be so noticeable. It's just going to be easier to make a texture with fewer seams. So I want to unfold this one last time. Actually, let's go ahead and connect our top of the head to that. So select our edges. Should just be able to go to polygons, so UV edge, like that. And then let's unfold this section here one last time. But again, I don't want to unfold the face because I already spent time on that, getting that looking good, and I don't want the unfold to mess that up at all. So I will select the edges around our face. I made an edge selection, so I'm just going to hold Control, right click, go to UV instead, and make sure I deselect the UVs that I don't want. It can be tedious, but you know, in reality, like what it comes down to is the fact that UVs are just tedious. So you have to accept the fact that they're tedious and just do them. This is a good example of something that everyone sort of, I mean, some people actually like this, don't get me wrong, and it can be therapeutic at times, but it's a good example of something that if you don't like doing, it's all the more reason to get fast at it, so you don't have to spend as much time doing it. You can just do it real quick, get done with it, and move on. So I have that selection, so I'm going to hold down Shift and select everything else to invert my selection, and then I'm going to unfold everything except for my my face. Alright, so it all looks pretty good. I can come in and I can move my neck portion up under here. I can select everything, and I want to get this inside that 1-to-1 UV space, so I want to scale everything down. Get that in there the best I can. So it's not, we're going to have a bunch of empty UV space here because we're just doing a head. Ideally this would be an entire character, and we would have a lot more room. We would be able to fill this out a lot more with a whole character. We'd have arms and legs and the torso, and then we have accessories and everything. So ideally we would fill this out a lot more, but for just a head, this UV space is kind of fine. We do still have the horns to do, which are going to be fairly simple. And if we wanted to, I mean, I could go in and just make a cut in here and cut those guys up, but I don't plan on putting a lot of detail in my horns, so I'm just going to do an unfold and relax and see the result I get. So it works without any overlapping, very little overlapping anyway. We have some in there, but you'll see that a lot of those are kind of stretched out, which is kind of a bad thing, so maybe I won't do that. So let's go in and just make a cut and try to unfold these in a better way. Polygons, cut UVs, so that's that one. So I'm just picking edges that are going, you know, usually going to be away from the camera and not easily seen. Cut UVs. Let's try unfolding these guys now. That's a little better. If I select this guy, see that that one's being kind of stubborn, so I might need to relax a little bit and then unfold. And eventually I'm going to need to scale that up again to match the size of the other one. And I want to make sure that they're matching the size of everything else, which they're not. They need to be quite a bit smaller. And then I can just put those guys in here somewhere. Alright, so that's our UV mapping for a head. Obviously, if we did a character, we would have this filled out a lot more with arms and legs and so on. If we wanted to add more accessories, we'd have room for more accessories, but for the most part, this is how you would UV map a head. And you can look at the head and you see that nothing is really severely stretched. Everything is kind of square, and it looks pretty good. We do see some seams, but you know, with some clever texturing, we can get rid of those seams and make them where they're not very noticeable. So that is it. It's how we texture a head.